All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Linda Bowden. I am the AARP Vermont Volunteer State President, and thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, AARP is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for all as we age. And one of the ways we do that is through events like this. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have gotten together with Local Motion to put this event on. We have programs monthly, the second Thursday of every month through September at 9 a.m. So we hope you folks will sign up and continue to participate. Again, to get to that site, you go to aarp.org/VT. And each one is a separate sign up. So you need to do that. You can also explore other kinds of events we have coming up. We've got cooking events, we have paint and sip, we have movies for grown-ups, we have one-day university lectures, and of course, the biking tips, which you don't want to miss. So today we're doing our Get Back on Your Bike and Biking Basics series. And our presenter today is Bevan Barber Campbell. And she is a certified cycling instructor with the League of American Bicyclists. And if everybody will please mute themselves, and we'll give a silent round of applause to Bevan and take it away.
Great, thanks. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm definitely excited to be here today, representing Local Motion. I'm having a little troubles advancing. Let's see. I don't know what my problem is. Hang on. Advancing the slides. Uh-oh, one sec, guys. Okay, great. Here we are. So this is the third in the series. I'm excited to be here again. I was here for the first one. Today, the general topic was extending your ride. So if I don't hit on what that means to you, I really hope you'll put some great questions in the chat. We'll definitely have time for questions. So want to make sure you really get the content that you're hoping for. So today I want to talk a little bit more about goal setting, what needs to be in your kit, all the tools and clothing, and get a little more in depth about safe cycling, the mindset and lane positioning, talk about the art of shifting, because geez, I've been biking for a long time and I still learn things every time. And again, have lots of time for questions. So in case you haven't been Zooming, with your grandchildren already for 1.5 years, real quick tutorial on Zoom. The first button is the mute. We're hoping you're all muted, but please feel free to ask a live question. You don't have to put it in the chat. You can unmute. You can also, the next one over is the little phone. Don't click that. Sometimes I do that by accident. That'll drop you out. You could turn your video on so we could see your lovely faces. The 3 dots over here highlighted by yellow is how you can change the actual layout of how you see the presentation. And then up at the top, which I can't see right now, is the button for clicking to open up the chat. You can't see that right now, right, Eliana? And you come down here and you put your question in the chat box and press send. So I wanted to start by taking a little poll. And I think Linda's going to pop up a poll to answer the following question. Are you riding as much as you wish you were? If you could go ahead and answer yes or no to that, I would be very curious to find out.
We've got
2, okay. Submit. Trying to submit mine, Linda. Let's see. There we go.
okay. I think we're going to end polling. We have all but me. All right. So it looks like we have 73% are saying no. Woo. And 27% say yes.
All right. Well, then you'll appreciate my little section I have on how I overcame my own negative answer to that question recently.
I'll share the results. Here they are.
Yeah, great. So we're going to work on that with some ideas.
Okay.
Awesome. So if you were at the first session, you already heard all my talk about why biking is so good for us. The benefits are just amazing. It's such a great way to improve our health. Even short rides or exercise, I talked about that last time, that exercise in 5-minute increments adds up. It all counts. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes of breathing hard to count towards making your health better. The other great thing about bicycling, it is low impact. You can ride at any size. You don't have to be skinny to ride a bicycle. I love that about it. If you do want to lose weight, and I try not to focus on that myself, but maybe as a great byproduct, when you get this habit of bicycling more regularly, the average adult loses 13 pounds in their first year of commuting by bicycle. I always like to say my friend lost 20 just for using her bike for transportation. Live longer and fight disease. There's a lot of compelling data out there. A recent study in Denmark showed that older adults who cycled even the smallest amounts were outliving their peers. Bicycling 20 miles per week can reduce your risk of heart disease by 50%. Women who bike and walk just 30 minutes per day have a lower rate of breast cancer. Adults with an active commute of just 30 minutes are half as likely to suffer heart failure. And cycling just 30 minutes a day can lower your risk of getting lung disease, cancer, and diabetes. So some pretty compelling data to just get on our bikes. The other great thing in terms of aging is the actual act, the repetitive movement of cycling does stimulate the serotonin, so good for elevating your mood and fighting depression. And also that same repetitive movement does stimulate your proprioception, which is the function in your ear that affects your balance. So while we might not ride because we're worried about falling, the biking does help our balance. As we know, exercise can improve your immunity by increasing your T cells. It also does increase the production of white and gray matter in your brain, which in the regions that are responsible for executive function and memory. So a lot of great benefits to our brain from exercising. Cycling is a great way to be social and strengthen your relationships with your partners or friends. It's a great kind of equalizer, you know, again, that riding at any size. It's also something that people can do of various physical and fitness abilities, and even partners who have different physical abilities can ride together. And I always like to point out that the health benefits of riding outweigh whatever risks are out there 20-1. That's data that comes from Trek bicycles. I'm having struggles with my advancing. Let me try. Whoop, there we go. Great. So first I want to talk about overcoming obstacles and goal setting. Again, I talked about this a little bit in the first presentation, and obviously at 73%, we're not riding as much as we wish we were. How much that is for each of us could be different. And what I always like to say to myself and my kids is, you know, the hardest part is always starting. So how do we get over that hump? And I always say, just keep it really simple so that you don't get overwhelmed, right? So simple goals. I just need to get on the bike and do one thing with it. I need to find the helmet, you know, just keeping it as a really simple process. It doesn't have to be a gigantic goal. And baby steps kind of goes along with that. You know, figure out what your intentions are, put the rides on your calendar. What are your barriers? You have a flat tire, you don't have a helmet. Write down the barriers and what the solution is to those. And again, even short rides are exercise, even short rides count. Combine your rides with other activities. So you just get out there and do stuff. Tools, I really like the National Bike Challenge, which I have here. Again, you can Google National Bike Challenge or Love to Ride and set a goal for yourself. And that was an eye-opener for me because I checked on my goal and I'm not keeping up with what I hope for this summer. So it definitely motivates me. And last time I talked about ride apps, and you can ask about that if you missed the first presentation. Other great tools are social rides and ride groups. So I wanted to just share a little personal story. I realized a couple of weeks ago I wasn't riding as much as I wanted to. I wasn't feeling great. I was, you know, wanting to ride more. And I was like, what's going on? What's keeping me from riding? So let me get rid of that. Whoops, hang on a second. Something's in my way. There we go. So, you know, this was my process. I'm just going to share it with you, see if it might help you. So I was like, what is my dilemma here? Asking myself questions like, what is holding me back? And what I realized since I became a mom, I really relied on biking for transportation to get me biking. And so I really like that. I like to ride with a purpose. So here's a picture of me riding my cargo bike to the dump. So I'm killing two birds with one stone. I'm doing my dump run, and it gives me a really good excuse to go for a great ride. So I needed to understand the what of like, and the why of why I ride. So is knowing that I like to bike for transportation. I like to have two goals. It's hard for me to motivate just to go out for a 20-mile ride. So then I strategized and planned. I was like, what are all the different ways I can ride? So I can ride the wind trainer after dinner, which is sometime at 9 or 10 p.m., but I'm a busy working mom, so that's how it goes. And I'll show you a picture of a wind trainer shortly. I usually only ride my wind trainer during the winter, so that was a little deflating to be like, oh, well, it's summer and I have to ride the wind trainer, but it's better than nothing. I could ride my mountain bike after I dropped my daughter off to her carpool for gymnastics. I could just go and do a quick ride. And then I could ride my new electric cargo bike to the dump on Saturday. So just came up with some really specific. I could also ride while my daughter's at gymnastics. So just came up with all the different ways I could ride. So then I set an intention. I was like, I'm going to try not to miss more than one day between rides. And every ride counts. So the other night I rode the wind trainer, and it was probably a very lame ride, and I barely broke a sweat, but I was like, I'm on the bike, it still counts. So that was important to me, to just not have, again, too huge of a goal about what the riding needs to look like. This is a picture of a wind trainer. I'm sorry, it's not a great picture, but it's basically a device that you can attach any bicycle to for the most part. And it creates resistance on the back tire. And I just put music on my phone from Pandora, or if you have a music app you like. And I just feel like if I can make myself at least ride a half hour, I feel better. And I'm reaching my goal to be riding. The other thing I had to get through my head was to accept the discomfort and imperfection. It's easy to delay a ride because you're like, oh, I don't like that seat, or I know I need a new stem, or something's not right. You know it's going to be uncomfortable. So I had to accept my own discomfort, like to get on my new electric bike. I hadn't ridden it yet because I was like avoiding dealing with the shakedown ride, which is you get on a new bike and you're like, oh God, these are all the things I need to fix. I need to put on a different saddle, etc. So treat every ride like it's a shakedown ride, meaning you're out there to be like, do I like the way this bike fits? Do I like this route? Is this helmet okay? Did I eat the right food? So and then you go home, you take your notes, and each time you go, it gets easier and better. And on that note, identify what worked. Like, oh, that was great. I feel better. And in that atomic habits loop that I talked about last time, there's a section where it's your craving. So every time the bike ride is great, you've created your craving. You know it's going to get easier. That's your inspiration for your next ride. And then just a little review of that book, The Atomic Habits by James Clear. I had just started reading it when I did the first presentation. So here's a quick summary of what I learned from it. I do recommend it. It was a great book. He talks about the habit cycle, which is the cue, craving, response, and reward. And his main features are make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And that's the loop that keeps you going and repeating your habit. And the great thing about habit was same thing with bicycling. It's to solve a problem with the least effort. So the more you bike, every time you bike, it gets easier. When I did my first dump run on the new e-bike, my husband and I like literally almost gave up, right? It was so much logistical finagling, and you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, this is just too laborious. I give up. But I knew in that moment, oh, well, the next time I do this, it's going to be easier. And then the next time I do this, it's going to be easier and easier. So I know enough to know that it gets easier each time. And that repetition creates that automaticity. You don't have to think about getting on your bike next time. It's just easy. You've got everything ready to go. The other thing I like that he talked about was focusing on the process or systems instead of the goal. We get so goal oriented. Instead of focus on what you like about the process. What do I like about biking? Not just the goal of biking more. And resetting. So the idea there is at the end of a ride, you're preparing your bike for the next ride. So prime your environment so everything's ready to go. You've made the adjustments maybe you needed to make. He also talks about the 2-minute rule, which is just do it for 2 minutes. That's your entry point. So if you can just get on your bike and ride for 2 minutes, that counts as being on the road to riding more. So you're focusing on establishing that habit instead of just meeting a goal. And he said, set yourself up for success. So there again, if you create too big of a goal, it's only a good ride if I ride 20 miles, you're not setting yourself up for the habit to stick by feeling successful. So that was just a little process of my own, like facing my own dilemma of not riding as much as I wanted to and how I kind of worked through it and wanted to share that personal experience with you guys. Let's see if I get rid of this thing up here. All right, so gear, and please tell me at the end if you want more depth on gear. We talked about this a little bit last time. I always like to point out that you really don't need much. You've got a bike that hopefully is working. You can wear any old clothes. Ideally, you have a helmet and a saddle that's comfortable for you. And finally, if you are wearing everyday clothes, having something visible, wearing a shirt that's a bright color like white, yellow, red, orange, having a yellow vest you throw on, definitely that would be my primary list of needs. So for short rides, that's great. Longer rides, you might want to start looking at cycling clothing. Gear of gloves is great for protecting the nerves in your hands from just a lot of pressure and being, having your hands on the handlebars for a long time. Gloves can help alleviate that. Bike shoes have a stiffer sole, so you have a better transfer of power. You can also be clicked in, which people call clipless, and that does create more efficiency in your riding. Clothing, I did want to point out there are some great resources now more than ever for plus size clothing for women. One of the original ones was Junonia, which I think is now called Juno, and I can put that in the chat. Terry Bicycles here in Vermont makes plus size clothing. So does, I think it's Athleta, yes. So I love that. There's some great options out there for clothing. You are going to probably want to have bottle cages on your bike or a way to carry water and food. Of course, you can just stop at all the preemie stands instead. Lights, I highly recommend that in the list of what to buy next is front and rear lights. One thing I love seeing is how many people are doing daytime running lights now on their bikes. It just really stands out. The people I see touring and riding, highly recommend that. So please consider that. Lots of great options out there for lights, and let me know if you want examples. Probably want to carry your repair kit. Or like I said, my friend used to carry a quarter in a book so she could just call her husband and wait for him to come get her. But you can learn how to change your tire. I think we are going to talk about that in an upcoming session. What you would need to carry for that is tire levers, a patch kit, extra tube, pump or CO2 cartridges. So it'd be good to have some things like that along. And rainwear, that was a mistake I made on my last dump run, is why did I not bring a raincoat? I got soaked and I actually probably could have gotten cold. So another thing in Vermont that maybe you want to have along. And like I say, every ride's a shakedown ride. Like how many times do I have to get stuck in the rain to remember to bring my raincoat? My last ride on my bike, I definitely realized I need a shorter stem because my bike is too long. Other things you might want to own or have available is a floor pump, which is one of those tall, actually, I think I have one right here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I can't see my camera right now, so let's see if I go like that. No. How do I see myself there? Whoops. Anyways, I don't know if you guys can see this. Floor pump would be a great thing to own. A set of Allen wrenches, because so many things on the bike that need to be adjusted, like your seat height. You probably need Allen wrenches for that. Having some chain lube and an old t-shirt so you can take good care of your chain would be other supplies that you're going to want to have on hand.
Devin, can I add a couple things to that list you have?
Love that. And I can have a sip of water.
Yeah, if you go back for half a second to that list, one thing that someone had recommended that I thought was a great idea was, you know, we all, with our COVID kits now, have got those gloves, the disposable gloves, and that's a really good thing to add into the kit. And I think as far as your repair kit goes, get a good quality tire as a replacement. I know that some of the hardware stores have got them, and that's great in a pinch, but a bike shop has got a better quality tire, and you need to make sure that that particular tire will fit your bike, that it's the right size, that's the number on there. So, and then I always have a short little air pump that I have on my frame that I keep with me, so that if I'm out on a longer ride, I can do that. Someone is asking here, Tree is asking, do the CO2 cartridges have a shelf life? And are they easy to use? I've never used one. Bevan, do you know?
I actually have never used one either. I have friends that use them. They may have a shelf life, but I bet it's pretty long, like at least 5. I mean, I guess it could slowly leak. We'd have to Google that when I don't know.
Well, I think that's something true, Tree, you can ask when you buy one. I know you have to be very careful with the CO2 cartridges because sometimes it can fill it very fast and you don't want it to pop. So those are all good questions to ask when you get your cart, when you get it at the bike shop. But thank you for bringing that up.
Some people say if you're going to be on a really remote ride, you probably should also still have a hand pump and the CO2 cartridges as a backup.
True, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Bevan.
Any other additions or pressing questions you see in the chat?
Not right now.
Good. Yeah, so keep thinking about that. I just quickly found a picture of day running lights here. I'm not sure about the validity of this study, but it makes sense to me. They've proven that cars with day running lights are safer and more visible. So why would it not apply to bicycles? I think it's a great habit to get into, especially with our grayish weather here and rainstorms and anything you can do to increase visibility you would want to do, right? And lights aren't, you know, they're not super expensive. You can get a decent light for under $50. Of course, the more you spend, probably the stronger and brighter. If you're going to ride at night, you want to look at more expensive lights, but for a nice day running or dusk light, you don't need to spend a fortune. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about this concept of vehicular cycling. Before that, well, let's do that and then I'll give my caveat. But so the foundation of my teaching as an instructor is this notion of vehicular cycling, which is just based on the idea that bicycle is a vehicle and that a cyclist will fare best when they're acted and treated as a driver of a vehicle. And it's based on the notion that it's the same road, same rights, same rules, same responsibilities, right? We all belong on the road. So I have a 6-minute YouTube video that is based on this notion of vehicular cycling. It's biking in LA, so you know, it doesn't necessarily apply to maybe what we're doing in Vermont, but it's an interesting perspective on feeling comfortable on the road. You can, if you don't like it, you can get up and grab a glass of water, but maybe you will find something interesting in it. So I'm going to go ahead and start it.
A lot of us would like to use our bikes more for things like shopping, going to work, exploring our cities. But that would mean using streets with lots of traffic. And a lot of us are afraid of that. We can't see ourselves driving our bikes in traffic. That's exactly what this video is about. How to drive your bike in traffic without being scared. I hope you've already read something about vehicular cycling or seen the video, Effective Cycling, distributed by the League of American Bicyclists. At the end of this video will be information about finding those resources it's best to be familiar with vehicular cycling principles before heading out onto the roadway. I want to show you how driving your bike in traffic looks, how the traffic responds to a bicycle on the roadway, and how it really is just like driving that you already do in your car. All of the traffic scenes you will see here were filmed in regular weekday traffic in Long Beach, California. None of the scenes were set up or made up. None of the drivers of cars, trucks, buses were aware that we were filming. The way you see them react to the presence of a bicycle was natural. The way the vast majority of drivers react. In scene after scene, you will see that the bicycle can be driven safely in traffic. As you begin to try these maneuvers yourself, I want you to only drive where you feel comfortable. A little anxiousness is okay, but being scared is a warning that you're way beyond your capabilities. Work up to more complex traffic situations as you feel ready to try it. Review with yourself what worked well and what to do differently next time. Read about vehicular cycling and think about when you see another cyclist on the road, are they driving according to the laws of traffic, or are they unsafe, unpredictable? Before we venture out onto the highway, I want to remind you of a few things that will make your driving more predictable, safer, and faster. First, I always wear a helmet. They do save lives, and they reduce injuries as well. And on my helmet, I have a rear view mirror so I can keep track of the traffic behind me. You can get these to go on eyeglasses as well. Hey, you know, you have a mirror in your car. Why not on your bike?
Third, I want to show you how to scan behind you. It helps you to be sure about the situation behind, and it shows other drivers that you are intending to make a change of position on the roadway or make a turn. Practice this in a parking lot or empty street until you can scan and keep going in a straight line. Lastly, I think we should review hand signals and other ways to communicate your intentions to other drivers. Right turn. I feel this arm signal for right turn is most intuitive. You can also use this one, the signal that car drivers sometimes use. Left turn. For left turn, put your left arm straight out. Stopping or slowing. Put your arm down with palm open. Waving and shaking can bring attention quicker. It's a good idea to use eye contact to confirm that another driver sees you when you want to change lanes or merge. At stop signs, drivers often confuse who has the right of way. You can get things unfrozen by wagging your head and mouthing the word go. And when a driver yields to you, or in another way makes your life easier, mouth thank you and smile. Even when I'm cut off or honked at, I never respond with insults. That makes it harder for the next bicyclist that comes their way.
Okay, I think we're ready. So why don't we take our bikes out onto the roadway and try driving and see what it's like from a cyclist's eye view. It's clear. Come on, let's go.
Cyclists new to traffic often try staying away from cars so much that they actually put themselves in danger. They swerve in and out of parked cars and aren't seen early enough by other drivers. They ride too close to car doors that might open unexpectedly. They won't control the lane they're in, and cars cut them off at turns. Lane control is important when you need to change lanes. You need to hold on to control through intersections. So let's start with getting comfortable with riding on roads with lanes too narrow to share. On this street, there's no safe way to share the lane. You need to be aware of other vehicles all around you. This is very important. Using a mirror or scanning helps you keep track of the situation behind. The traffic behind or following drivers may not be able to see brake lights of those ahead of you, so use your hand signals. Holding your place in line at a signal prevents cars from squeezing around you. Watch for pedestrians in crosswalks or near parked vehicles that hide them. It's against the law to fail to stop at a crosswalk when other vehicles are already stopped. You may have hit that person. Be ready to start from stops promptly. Don't make others wait behind you unreasonably. Don't tailgate. You can't miss the potholes or the oil slicks. When you're going to turn, mirror to the rear or scan, signal, and position yourself correctly. Be predictable. eye contact with drivers approaching you. Make sure they see you. Look at the way traffic behind me can get to the left or right to turn. Notice how calm and orderly traffic flows behind me. There's no evidence of impatience or confusion. The drivers know there's no room for me to move over, and I'm not holding them up. If you can't keep up with traffic, pull over when it's safe and let faster drivers surge ahead. When leaving the narrow lane, scan and wave thank you to following drivers for their patience and understanding. Now that we can control the lane, let's try a simple signalized intersection.
Great. That is great. So I hope you feel like you got something out of that. You may not feel like it applies to your riding here in Vermont if you live outside of one of our larger towns. I like it because it just, that sense of belonging on the road that he has, I feel like can be impactful to people that feel like they don't belong on the road. I liked how he talked about the mirror. I forgot to mention that. If you feel like you don't have a lot of good neck flexibility for scanning, you really might want to add a mirror to your helmet. I liked how he's talked about scanning, and I talk about it as like this 360-degree situational awareness. If you're a skier, it's something I try to do a lot when I'm skiing, so I really have a sense of who's around me. I liked how he was talking about scanning and signaling and communicating with cars. I love that, like the nods and the gestures I think are really important. And yeah, I hope you got something out of it. Please put some questions or concerns in the chat about it if you have any reflections on it. There is a part 2, so it's cyclist eye view. You can watch the part 2 as well. He gets a little more into the nitty-gritty of lane positioning, but we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. The only caveat I wanted to put in there that, you know, for an aging population is that if you may just decide the roads are not for you, right? And so if you feel like you've lost the agility, if your response times are slowing, and worrying about stopping and starting, you know, the trails are going to be the place that you might just do all your riding, and that's great. So you don't have to go on the road. I liked what he said about listening to yourself about your fear, but I've also found that some of my fears are irrational. So it's nice to see someone's perspective on that. Okay, so what is this mindset and the behaviors of this vehicular safe cycling? Real quickly, it's being predictable. And how are you predictable? You drive your bike like you drive a car. You don't just do whatever you want. You follow the rules of the road. Another big part of this mindset is being very visible, which I think he talked about, this idea that lane positioning can make you more visible. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Wearing bright clothing, having your day running lights, whatever you can do to be visible, it makes a huge difference with crashes. I mean, the crash data does show, if you ask a driver who hits a cyclist, what's the first thing they all say? I didn't see her. I mean, you know, they're not hitting us on purpose. So what can we do, not to victim blame, but what can we do to make ourselves the most visible? It behooves us to do that. In that same note, be defensive, right? You're supposed to be a defensive driver of a car as well. You're cautious, you're alert, you have your 360-degree situational awareness. Communicate, as he talked about. Be confident. I think the video is great for showing just that confidence that he belongs on the road, and he's also courteous at the same time. But of course, always putting your own safety first. I always say safety first, then following the law, and third is being courteous and creating good diplomacy between drivers of cars and drivers of bicycles. I debated about putting this slide in because this data is old, but I like it more for what it says about bike crashes. And I think the interesting thing about it is it shows that if your greatest fear is being hit by a car, that of all the bike crashes, that's actually a small percentage. So falls are definitely an issue as we age and scarier as we age. So That's going to be a consideration we're always thinking about. How can I safely ride a bicycle and not fall? What are the things? And there are strategies for that, and we've talked about some of them. So thinking that through for yourself, how do I feel about falls? But the main reason I like this data is what it actually indicates if you break it down. The half of the car bike crashes that are caused by cyclists and the half caused by motorists. For the ones caused by cyclists, in this data, it's basically when cyclists are not following the rules of the road. They're biking out of a driveway without looking. They're taking a left-hand turn from the right lane. They're biking on the wrong side of the road. So biking facing traffic, right? So to me, I look at that and I'm like, oh, okay, well, if I really follow this vehicular cycling premises, I'm greatly reducing my chance of having a car bike collision. And the motorist one, again, what's the first thing they say? I didn't see her. Why are they not seeing you? A lot of times it is lane positioning, which we're going to talk about with some diagrams in a minute. It's also by being super visible, super defensive, and simple things like your behaviors in intersections, which we'll talk about now. All right, so lane positioning, also called lane control. Sometimes called sharing the lane. I'm not a huge fan of that because I feel like the share the road signs have become very confusing to people. So I like to talk about whether you're gonna, when you're in the street, whether you're gonna ride and side by side with a car or not. So this first picture shows someone what I call taking up the lane or lane control. So the one on the left, the person is queued up with the cars. And they've occupied the lane. So that's called taking up the lane. When and why would you do that? So first of all, let's look at the bike lane picture on the right here. So we love our bike lanes. They make us feel like we have a place on the road, but there's some issues with bike lanes. So you're cruising down the bike lane, you're gonna cruise into this intersection, and suddenly this car takes a right-hand turn. So in this case, you might be safer abandoning the bike lane and moving into the main lane with the cars. Can you see my cursor? You guys can. Because then you're queued up and you're more visible. What's the other issue here in this bike lane? Your visibility by an oncoming car from the other side of the intersection is being blocked by this car. So if you went straight and someone decided to take a left in front of you, maybe they don't see you. So queuing up, I like because I feel like it makes you the most visible to everybody in this intersection. So I'm going to back up a little bit. So you're supposed to occupy, the law states that you're supposed to occupy the rightmost lane that serves your destination. So I could elect to say, well, the bike lane is not serving my destination at this point. I want to jump out of it and actually queue up in the main lane. So the law only states you take the rightmost lane, but that's up to your own judgment. And again, you want to optimize your visibility to other cars and your vantage point so you can see all hazards. Why else would you take the lane? You want to avoid the door zone of parked cars. It helps you make your intentions clear that you're going straight. Also, it prepares you for a left turn. And in roundabouts, I highly recommend 50 to 100 feet before a roundabout, you're going to merge into the main lane, even if there is a bike lane leading to the roundabout, you're going to queue up and you're going to bike through that roundabout as fast as is comfortable for you when you can yield into the roundabout. What else do I want to say about these pictures? My other big thing I always like to say about intersections, I have a suspicion, which I can't get the data on. I think, of course, we all know intersections are one of the most dangerous places when we drive, whether we're in a car or on a bicycle. So we need to be really cautious when we're in intersections. So when we're on a bike, I think people have the instinct to bike as fast as they can through an intersection. It's the same reason we tell kids not to run through a crosswalk. Slow is better. So when I get to an intersection, if I'm going to hit the yellow, I'm slowing down, I'm staying in the bike lane, I'm not going to go. You want to make sure you have plenty of time because you actually want to slowly proceed through the intersection because that gives everybody the chance to see you. So if you're zooming along through this bike lane and you're just going to fly into this intersection to try to get through there as fast as possible because you think that makes you safer, you actually might surprise some of the cars who won't have the chance to see you. The other thing to know as a driver of a car for bike lanes, I just moved back from Colorado, but I know in Colorado, the bike lane is considered the rightmost lane. Is that correct here, Aliana? That when you're driving a car, you actually are supposed to merge into the bike lane to take a right-hand turn. I don't know what the Vermont law on this is, but logic also states, why would that be better? Well, then you're queuing up with the bikes. So it makes more sense for you. It's actually safer for bicyclists if you actually merge to the bike lane as your rightmost lane to take a right turn in a car. So lane positioning on rural roads. Again, the goal is to optimize your visibility to cars. Your other large consideration is avoiding the rough shoulder and debris. Maybe you have enough room to the right of the white line to use that as a shoulder or bike path. As we all know, there's lots of roads in Vermont where there is no road at all to the right of the white line. So basically you have a right to take up essentially the right track, the track of the right wheel of a car, right? You can occupy this space to the left of the white line. Feel free to do that if you feel like the quote shoulder is not sufficient for you to bike on. Well, when would that change? Descending, you definitely want to almost take up the whole lane descending, because you might be just as fast as the cars descending, first of all. It's safer for you not to be hugging the edge of the road because of debris or cornering. So take up that lane. The cars can slow down and let you safely descend in the way that's most comfortable for you. So curves, in a sense, how to be visible to the cars behind you. These are a little counterintuitive, but this is considered the best practice. So if you had this really sharp curve in this top photo, in this case, you actually do want to come out to the center, if not the leftish side of your travel lane, because as the car comes around this sharp turn, you being further out to the left is actually going to allow them to see you more quickly in their vantage point, so they don't hug that curve too closely. All right, how about cresting a really steep hill and you're just got to the top and you're about to start going down? In that case, you actually might want to move as far to the right as possible, even if it gets you a little tight, because as a car crests behind you and you're on the other side of that crest, they can't see you. So in that case, you're assuming you're not being visible. Which brings me to the point that this whole lane positioning and where to position yourself, it's kind of a constant conversation you're having in your head. If you have a route you do all the time, you're like, okay, today I'm going to try it this way. And like in my old bike commutes, I had ways that I did certain intersections that were just based on how I thought was best to do it. So just wanted to say that lane positioning is something you're kind of always navigating and thinking about and modifying and doing what feels right to you. My last point is, again, you belong on the road. You're one of many slow moving vehicles, such as the Amish carriage or our friendly farmer in his very slow moving tractor. So I like to think about that in Vermont, because I'm like, well, I'm no different than a tractor or the Amish buggy, and these cars behind me can wait until they have the opportunity to pass me safely. I know in Colorado, we had to pass a law that said a car could pass the double line to pass, could cross the double line to safely pass a bicyclist. I don't know if Vermont has a law either way on that, but it makes sense because normally it's illegal for you to cross a double yellow center line. But obviously to safely pass a cyclist, I would say feel free in your car to cross that double yellow. And please put any thoughts about lane positioning or questions in the chat. Shifting, there is an art to shifting. I feel like every time I mountain bike, I'm like, wow, I've been mountain biking for 30 years and I still forget to preemptively shift before I reach a hill. So it is an art to it. Real quickly, I just wanted to talk about the positioning of your chain. Often when I grab a kid's bike, I find that they're either in the smallest chain ring up front or the bigger one, and I usually have to tell them it's best if you start in this middle, right? That's for your flat. So in your middle chainring, if you have a triple up front, these are the front part underneath the cranks of your pedals. The other basic of shifting is your right hand is for small changes, because your right hand is what shifts the rear cassette on your rear wheel. So I always think right hand, small changes, left hand shifts you between the 3 big chain rings, or the 2, you may only have 2. Those are for bigger changes like going down a steep hill or going up a hill. So think right hand, small changes. You do want to shift while you're pedaling, but you actually want to ease up as well. So you give a nice big push, and then in the moment that you shift, you're actually kind of easing up and not pushing as hard. It just makes the shifting go a little more smoothly. The other thing about shifting is your general mindset with it is your goal is to create a nice consistent cadence for efficiency and good energy use of your energy. And they talk about a range of 70 to 95 RPMs, which is probably a faster spin than you anticipate. Not sure how I could describe that in this conversation, but you tend to see newer cyclists in a kind of a harder gear, and they're not really pedaling very rapidly, that you're more efficient. It's better for your muscles if you can get into a kind of a higher beat cadence and try to maintain that. And you also want to kind of maintain that with your rolling hills. If you are an adult who's still learning how to shift, a great way to practice is on a wind trainer, which I talked about earlier. I had a woman who I taught who didn't grow up biking, and that was the recommendation we had, is her husband actually had a wind trainer. I said, just go home and practice your shifting. If you do want to start doing clipless pedals where you're clipped into your pedals, the wind trainer is a great way to practice those as well, because you can just practice clicking out, clicking out. All right. The other thing I want to show you in this diagram is it's ideal for your chain to stay somewhat straight, as you see in the green. So in general, the rule of thumb is, I'm going to go to what you're not supposed to do. In general, you don't want to go in your big chain ring up front and your the big ring of your cassette in the back, because you get this angle. So in general, and then you don't want to do the opposite either, where you're in your small chain ring in front and your small chain ring in back. And the reason is you get more of this torque and you're not having your chain more in a straight line. So when you're in this big chain ring, that means you're going down a big hill. You're probably going to be in the smaller one in back, because small is harder. They're the opposite of each other. And if you're in your tiny chain ring up front, yeah. Do you have a comment about that, Linda? No?
That was not me, but it's fun when you look at the Tour de France right now that's going on, and where they have their bikes even going uphill. It's amazing. Yeah. They're going 21, 30 miles an hour uphill, 60 down, it's crazy. But anyway, no comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France within arm's reach, and it was spectacular. The climbing was ridiculous. So speaking of climbing and hills, it's hard to love hills, but having the right gears. If you're doing a lot of really steep climbing, people tend to have this triple cassette up or chain rings up front, but that's been evolving, and I haven't kept up with this as much of recent. But that's something you can talk to a bike shop about, is I want to be able to climb hills. If I don't have an e-bike, what's the best gearing I could have on my bicycle? And that's something you can change. But let's talk about shifting for hills. So the biggest part is anticipating and preparing. So often if I'm getting ready, it's obviously a pretty steep hill. I'm going to shift with my left hand for my big changes and go into my smallest chain ring up front. So we talk about hills as sort of a 3-part thing. You're approaching the hill, so you downshift into your small chain ring up front. You're maybe starting to shift with your right hand as well. So that first third of the hill, you're using all your gears. Let's say halfway up the hill, you've maxed out, you're in your easiest gear. Maybe now you need to take a break, or you need to stand up and ride for a while. It's great to mix it up between standing and sitting, because it uses slightly different muscles. And then the third part of the hill, either you're, totally exhausted or you're ready to crank it and get through the rest of that. I have something I call a resting climb, where I'm in my easiest gear and I just try to spin as lightly as I can. And I don't focus on going fast or hard. And I just kind of let my heart rate recover. So I stay on the bike, but I'm able to kind of give myself a little resting opportunity. Whoops, trying to advance my slides. 1 second. Great, we're almost done. Real quick, just again, the 4th in the series will be on August 12th, and it's going to be focused on bicycle maintenance. I'm thinking we're going to have a guest mechanic that's going to walk us through some bike cleaning and repair and fixing the flat. And just wanted to highlight some events again. I always love to promote the National Bike Challenge, which runs May through September. And you can set a goal for it. The Bike Ferry is running June 18th through August 11th. There is the Snow Farm concert series. I thought might be a fun bike event. You could take the ferry out to South Hero, and there's that's on the Local Motion website. Tour de Farm sounds like a lot of fun. I know Linda's training for that right now. And another ride that Local Motion sponsors called Richard's Ride. And it sounds neat. It's all different levels, all different lengths, definitely like a bike event for all abilities. Seems like a great event in October. And finally, just a little bit about Local Motion. There's our website. We do run the Bike Ferry. We have bike rentals and an e-bike lending library. We also do a lot of education like this and advocacy. And I'd like to now open it up to any great questions you guys have. Let's see if I can open up the chat. And again, feel free to do a live question and turn on your video. And oh, there's the chat. Yeah.
So you could stop sharing if you wanted to, and that would open it up to a new view for us. And there's a question there about, there we go, about the ferry as far as how far into September the ferry will go.
Yeah, so I think if you go to the website, it changes a little bit. It's, let's see here, weekdays, Monday through Friday until September. And then starting in September, it's only weekends. And that's on our website.
Great. I have been recording this session just to let people know. I will be putting it on the AARP.org YouTube site. So if you want to go back and get any information or review some of the things that Bevan has said, you can go back and watch that again. We will send out that link also. I know there have been some good comments. Roger knows every type of equipment that you should get that's efficient to put on your bike, I think. He's really had some great tips as far as sunglasses and everything else. I need a good pair of sunglasses. So Roger, do you want to tell us a little bit about those sunglasses you were mentioning?
I found this back in the days I used to ride a motorcycle. There's a brand called Wiley X, and the piece that goes over your ear is flat, so you don't feel it squished under the helmet. But essentially, I sent a link to the mirror I like a lot that fits on any kind of glasses. And with the sunglasses from Wiley X, they send you 3 lenses, a dark one, a clear one, and an amber one. And I started using that when I went skiing in California. There's a lot of sun up there, and it was hard to see if there was a bump or whatever. And with amber type of lenses, you can see, you have a better depth perception. And so I started using that skiing, and then I started using it bicycling, and oh my God, it makes a big difference. Plus, when you go from a very sunny area to a shaded area under trees or whatever, which happens all the time on the road, it's not so bad. You can still see much better than with the dark sunglasses. So that's what I like to use. And with the mirror that fits on it, you can lightly turn your head around and see directly behind you to see if the person following you is still there, or swinging the head to the right a little bit, you can see if there's a car right next to you, as opposed to if you have one on the handlebar, you can't do that, you know. Plus the one on the handlebar, it gets scratched or bumped all the time. So I really like that one. I have tried the one that sticks to your helmet, but the pre-glue thing doesn't hold it in the heat of the car. So it comes undone. So the one that connects with the three little branches, it's totally adjustable. At first, some people have a hard time with it because it's like right here. But I got used to it, and for me, it's a lifesaver. I use it when I go rollerblading as well, you know, because I share the road without a bike lane or anything, and I see the cars coming from a distance. So
Great, great. Thank you, Roger. That's really, really helpful. I The other thing is just making sure on these long rides, I found anyway, is to make sure you have padded shorts, and not to be pushing products here in this session, but it really makes a difference for comfort if you can have a good pad under you for those longer rides. I don't know that the compression does any good, but it's really nice having the pockets in a bike shirt, and also it's made of a fabric that will wick away the moisture, as well as having the padding for the seat. And for longer rides, I'm going to be doing the 30-mile ride, which for some people isn't a big deal, but for the Tour de Farms. And I definitely, we will be riding with a padded seat.
I would say 25 miles and above, padded shorts and gloves as well really help. They make it more enjoyable for a longer ride like that.
Yeah, and the gloves are a good tip, as Bevan was mentioning also, just from shock of going over bumps and things like that. It helps take out some of that. I see lots of good tips. People were adding things about watching out for cats and making sure you own the lane. I know chipmunks have been, I don't know, they're just going crazy these days. So there are lots of things that fly out in front of us, even on protected bike lanes. But are there any questions that folks have? That we have a rich group of riders in attendance today. So does anybody have any specific questions that people have? Fingerless gloves versus full gloves. I go with the fingerless gloves and then in the wintertime, I'll put another pair of gloves underneath those. So I usually double up. But I like having that, the fingertips, because I use apps. And so it's easier for me to get to some of the other kinds of modifications or additions when I use apps. Otherwise, you got to take the gloves off in order to do that. Or if you're answering the phone at a stoplight. So that would be my tip. You don't really need the fingertips when you're riding unless it's winter, and then you might want to get a different kind of glove. Any other questions that people have? Okay, wait, there was one about a gear shop. Let me see.
People had questions about ideal gearing. I recommended working with a bike shop for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
There's some, yes, bike lanes. Yeah, glass and bike lanes. Yeah, do you guys have a way to report it in the city? Yeah, that's great. You know, again, that's a really important point about bike lanes. It's like, well, if there's glass or snow or a parked car in the bike lane, that's not your rightmost lane anymore. So you're not obligated to bike in that bike lane anymore.
So see, click, fix is the Vermont way of, oh, there you go. A tree put it in the chat for reporting these kinds of things. It's an app that you would put on your phone. It takes the GPS and they respond immediately to those things. So that's really awesome.
Mm.
Great. Very good.
And I just wanted to add as parting words, I forgot to tell my personal aging gracefully story at the beginning, but I did at the first one, that our last session, we're really hoping people will share their stories of how biking has improved or changed their lives in the past or this summer, and share those stories of how they overcame obstacles or the best ride they did, or all this great, what you learned about gear. We're really hoping you guys will share those at the last workshop in September.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. I was just going to do the same. So keep a journal if you can about some favorite rides too. We can share that. And looking forward to having folks attend that particular session, because this is where we'll be able to share some tips and other kinds of experiences that folks have had. So thank you folks for being part of our community and our biking. And Bevan, thank you so much. AARP is very appreciative of our partnership. And I hope you all have enjoyed the sessions that we've been putting on as much as I have. So look forward to seeing all of you next month, the second Thursday at 9 a.m., which will be August 12th. And there we'll be talking about maintenance gears and changing tires. So thank you so much for attending today, and happy riding.
Yes, happy riding. Thanks, everybody.